freedom,
family,
world unity,
all these things and more will be discussed on this podcast.
real stories, real people, real debates. On this podcast, we like to express our freedoms and talk about anything and everything goes.
Like freedom, family is important to us, and anybody that is listening, watching, or coming on the show as a guest star are all considered part of the greatest family to ever bless the solar system, the human race. No matter who you are, where you come from, you will always have a voice here on this podcast.
We like to flex our First Amendment, where all speeches and opinions are accepted for the right of freedom of speech. We have a saying we like to live by. Live life with eyes wide open. Being open-minded leads to true understanding of the world as it really is. Please, come, join us, and enjoy this experience as we embark on this journey of truth as we dismantle the subjective truth. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm your co-host, Victoria.
And you're experiencing high consciousness.
Disclaimer. Any and all information on topics presented are to the best of all who is present in each episode's knowledge. The goal of this podcast is to bring people together and set the example we all wish to see in our everyday lives. Whether it's home life, education, politics, history, business, etc. Any and all subjects can and will be talked and peacefully debated about on this podcast. On debate episodes, there will be a set rules of debate that hosts and guests alike must follow. We ask that you, the audience, like we ask of our guests, in the comments to please try to keep the language as clean as possible. We are a podcast for entertainment as well as educational purposes. Here, we are all equal no matter what race, age, or gender. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Hi, y'all.
Welcome back
to another episode of
High Consciousness. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm your co-host, Victoria.
And we are High Consciousness.
Welcome to a new episode, everybody. Today is Monday.
Constitutional Mondays.
So, you know what that means. We're going to dive into the Constitution once again. Silence Dogood letters 3 through 5. And a little recap on last Monday's constitutional chapter. Nick, will you give us a little review?
Benjamin Franklin, at the age of, I believe, was 16 years old, was working for his oldest brother's print shop, which was...
No, he wanted to work for
he
the
wanted,
print shop.
he want,
Yeah, he wanted to.
He wanted to work for the print shop, but his brother wouldn't let him because of... He was afraid of him being judged, and he was not really being cut out for that work environment because how aggressive and, it's media during that time. So... what Benjamin Franklin thought to do was write these letters and personate himself as a widowed lady known as Silence Dogood. And as his letters were getting sent to his print shop, his articles actually made it to the paper. And these are the letters that got what's the word I'm looking for?
Published.
Published
within one of the first newspapers in
America. The first newspaper in America.
Yeah, the first newspaper in America. It was called the New England Courier or something like that. Yeah. So, without further ado, Constitution 1.2. Let's get into it, y'all. Alright, Silence Dogood, letter number 3. April 30th, 1722. To the author of the New England Courant. Oh, it was the Courant, not the Courier. The Courant. But, I mean, nowadays, I guess we would call it the Courier because that would be the proper word now.
Mm-hmm. Never changes over time.
Yeah, definitions change over time. Sir, it is undoubtedly the duty of all persons to serve the country they live in according to their abilities. Yet I sincerely acknowledge that I have hitherto been very deficient in this particular. Whether it was for want of will or opportunity, I will not at present stand to determine. Let it suffice that now I take up a resolution to do for the future all that lies in my way for the service of my countrymen. I have from my youth been indefatigably. Wow, what does that word mean? I can't even say it. because I've never heard that word be said before. I've never read that kind of word before. What the hell does that mean?
I'm pretty sure it has something to do with fatigue.
I mean, yes, that's what I'm gathering, but just to make sure, indefatigable. A person or their efforts persisting tirelessly.
So it's the opposite of fatigue.
So that means
He
that
never gets
she's
tired.
she's very persistent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna reread that again, so that way we can put it in modern terms that we can understand here. I have from my youth been persistently studious to gain and treasure up in my mind all useful and desirable knowledge, especially such as tends to improve the mind. I have from my youth been indefatigably or persistently studious to gain and treasure up in my mind all useful and desirable knowledge, especially such as tends to improve the mind and enlarge the understanding. As I have found it very beneficial to me, I am not without hopes that communicating my small stock in this manner, by piecemeal to the public, may be at least in some measure useful. I am very sensible that it is impossible for me, or indeed any one writer, to please all readers at once. Various persons have different sentiments, and that which is pleasant and delightful to one gives another disgust. He that would, in this way of writing, please all, is under a necessity to make his themes almost as numerous as his letters. He must one while be merry and diverting, then more solid and serious, one while sharp and satirical, then to mollify that. Mollify? I guess to modify maybe, and then to modify it, be sober and religious, and at one time let the subject be politics, then let the theme be love. Thus will every one time or another find something agreeable to his own fancy, and in his turn be delighted. According to this method I intend to proceed, bestowing now and then a few gentle reproofs on those who deserve them, not forgetting at the same time to applaud those whose actions merit commendation. And here I must not forget to invite the ingenious part of your readers, particularly those of my own sex, to enter into a correspondence with me, assuring them that their condescension in this particular shall be received as a favor and accordingly acknowledged. I think I now have finished the foundation, and I intend in my next to begin to raise the building. Having nothing more to write at present, I must make the usual excuse in such cases of being in haste, assuring you that I speak from my heart when I call myself the most humble and obedient of the servants your merits have acquired. Silence Dogood. So that one just kind of goes into how they're describing that,
everyone has different tastes, and if we could just find that balance for everyone to enjoy the piece, and that way everyone can enjoy your paper. This is what I'm guessing, from my understanding.
All right, Silence Dogood letter number 4, May 14th, 1722.
How long ago was it? So that was May 14th, and the last letter.
The last one was April 30th, so it's about every 2 weeks. It looks like. Yeah, because the last one was April 16th, Silence Dogood number 2, so it's like every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in Latin, I believe, here. And some itium nuc vel Grace loci vel Latine docendis Cicero. I don't know what that means. I'm not going to try and type that into the Googles. I don't want to. To the author of the New England Courant. Sir, discoursing the other day at dinner with my reverend boarder, formerly mentioned, whom for distinction's sake we will call by the name of Clericus, concerning the education of children, I had asked his advice about my young son William, whether or no I had best bestow upon him academical learning, or, as our phrase is, bring him up at our college. He persuaded me to do it by all means, using many weighty arguments with me, and answering all the objections that I could form against it. telling me withal that he did not doubt that the lad would take his learning very well and did not idle away his time, as too many there nowadays do. These words of Clericus gave me a curiosity to inquire a little more strictly into the present circumstances of the famous seminary of learning, but the information which he gave me was neither pleasant nor such as I expected. As soon as dinner was over, I took a celerity walk into my orchard, while ruminating on Clericus's discourse with much consideration, until I came to my usual place of retirement under the great apple tree, where, having seated myself and carelessly laid my head on a verdant bank, I fell by degrees into a soft and undisturbed slumber. My waking thoughts remained with me in my sleep, and before I waked again, I dreamt the following dream. I fancied I was traveling over pleasant and delightful fields and meadows, and through many small country towns and villages, and as I passed along, all places resounded with the fame of the temple of learning. Every peasant who had wherewithal was preparing to send one of his children at least to this famous place. And in this case, most of them consulted their own purses instead of their children's capacities, so that I observed a great many, yea, the most part of who were traveling thither, were little better than dunces and blockheads. Alas, alas. Ooh. So I guess right there she's saying that in her dream,
she's talking about
that
school.
the rich people that, can afford to put their children through the temple of learning,
schooling,
they seem to be no better than dum-dums.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very disturbing. At length I entered upon a spacious plain, in the midst of which was erected a largely and stately edifice. It was so to this that a great company of youths from all parts of the country were going. So stepping in among the crowd, I passed on with them, and presently arrived at the gate. The passage was kept by two sturdy porters named Riches and Poverty, and the latter obstinately refused to give entrance to anyone who had not first gained the favor of the former, so that I observed many who came even to the very gate were obliged to travel back again as ignorant as they came, for want of this necessary qualification. However, as a spectator I gained admittance, and with the rest entered directly into the temple. In the middle of the great hall stood a stately and magnificent throne, which was ascended by two high and difficult steps. On the top of it sat Learning in an awful state. She was apparelled wholly in black, and surrounded almost on every side with innumerable volumes in all languages. She seemed very busily employed in writing something on half of a sheet of paper, and upon inquiry I understood she was preparing a paper called the New England Courant. On her right hand sat English, with a pleasant smiling countenance, and handsomely attired on her left were seated several antique figures with their faces valid. I was considerably puzzled to guess who they were, until one informed me, who stood beside me, those figures on her left hand were Latin, Greek, Hebrew, etc., and that they were very much reserved, and seldom or never unavailed their faces there. So, this is a very odd dream. It seems a little familiar to ones that I've had even. So, the figures on her left hand were Latin, Greek, Hebrew, etc., and that they were very much reserved and seldom or never unavailed their faces here. And then to few or none, though most of those who have in this place acquired so much learning as to distinguish them from English, pretended to an intimate acquaintance with them, and when I inquired of him what could be the reason why they continued valid in this place especially, he pointed at the foot of the throne, where I saw idleness attended with ignorance, and these, he informed me, were they who first veiled them, and still kept them so. Ooh, okay. Let's just talk about that real quick.
Mm-hmm. That's a very lengthy letter.
It's a lengthy letter, but
a dream.
This is a dream, and it's very detailed, and seeing as how Learning is like in an awful state, which, at that time, awful meant,
awesome.
in a very awe-inspiring type kind of state where it seems that learning as a statue is like just wholly enveloped in everything, and she's got figures of enlightenment and philosophy that are sitting by her of the Latin, Greek, and Hebrew cultures and more, but the weird thing is that their faces are like covered for whatever reason, and apparently the reason is because of ignorance and the other one that's sitting there.
Yeah, it was ignorance and
idleness and ignorance,
not doing anything and being ignorant about it,
and following other things blindly,
and
like kind of veiling the philosophy, veiling the truth, which is what ignorance is bliss. I mean, it's not really bliss. To be blissfully ignorant is not a good thing. And even this dream seems to be interpreting that as such as well. Now I observed that the whole tribe who entered into the temple with me began to climb the throne. But the work proving troublesome and difficult to most of them, they withdrew their hands from the plow and contented themselves to sit at the foot, with Madam Idleness and her maid Ignorance, until those who were assisted by diligence and a docile temper had well nigh got up the first step. But the time drawing nigh, in which they could no way avoid ascending, they were fain to crave the assistance of those who had got up before them, and who, for the reward perhaps of a pint of milk or a piece of plum cake, lent the lubbers a helping hand, and sat them in the eye of the world upon a level with themselves. The other step, in being the same manner, ascended, and the usual ceremonies at an end, every beetle skull seemed well satisfied with his own portion of learning, though perhaps he was even just as ignorant as ever. And now the time of their departure being come, and they marched out of doors to make room for another company, who waited for entrance. And I, having seen all that was to be seen, quitted the hall likewise, and went to make my observations on those who had just gone out before me. So, wow. So, there's like some that, will climb, the ladder not wanting to take the help of others, and then there's others that like kind of need the help, and they will or won't take the help depending on what the reward is to get them to go. So basically saying that learning has to be universal. It can't be just, a
one-track train.
Yeah, it can't be just out of straight, desire, or because, I'm bored or whatever. You have to actually, want it. You have to attain it, and
It has to be a drive.
It's got to be a drive, yeah. Some, I perceived, took merchandising, others to traveling, and some to one thing, some to another, and some to nothing, and many of them from henceforth, for want of patrimony, lived as poor as church mice, being unable to dig and ashamed to beg, to live by their wits as it was impossible. But the most part of the crowd went along a large beaten path which led to a temple at the further end of the plain, called the Temple of Theology. The business of those who were employed in this temple being laborious and painful, I wondered exceedingly to see so many go towards it. But while I was pondering this matter in my mind, I spied Pecunia behind a curtain. Or Pecunia? How do you... Pecunia?
I think it's
Pecunia?
Pecunia. Or Pecunia.
I don't know. Pecunia. I've never seen that word, never heard that word before.
It's like a name, so I'm going to say it's...
Pecunia? Mm-hmm. That's what it looks like to me.
Pecunia
behind a curtain, beckoning to them with her hand, which sight immediately satisfied me, for those whose sake it was, at the great part of them, I will not say all, traveled that road. In this temple I saw nothing worth mentioning except the ambitious and fraudulent contrivances of Plagius, who, notwithstanding he had been severely reprehended for such practices before, was diligently transcribing some eloquent paragraphs out of Tillotson's works, etc., to embellish his own. Plagiarizing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Okay. Now I bethought myself in my sleep, and that it was time to be at home. Wait. Plagiarize. Transcribing some out of all these different works to embellish his own in one.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like the dream that I had with the master under the tree of life. Things have been sifted and shifted, lines blurred by winds of change.
Mm.
Ooh. Okay. So this seems like almost very... This seems to echo my own dream I had last year. But in a other kind of way. Like, it's very odd. Now I bethought myself in my sleep that it was time to be at home, and as I fancied I was traveling back thither, I reflected in my mind on the extreme folly of those parents who, blind to their children's dullness and insensible to the solidity of their skulls, because they think their purses can afford it, will needs send them to the temple of learning, where, for want of a suitable genius, they learn more than how to carry themselves handsomely and enter a room gentilly, which might as well be acquired at a dancing school, and from whence they return, after abundance of trouble and charge, as great blockheads as ever, only more proud and self-conceited. Ooh. So, I guess for the ones that go in and they don't really, learn a whole lot, they just become more and more self-centered and conceited.
And being blockheads.
Yeah. Pride often come before the fall. Isn't that how that phrase goes?
Mm-hmm.
Pride come before the fall. While I was in the midst of these unpleasant reflections, Clericus, who with a book in hand was walking under the trees, accidentally waked me. To him I relayed my dream with all its particulars, and he, without much study, presently interpreted it, assuring me that it was a lively representation of Harvard College, etc. I remain, sir, your humble servant, Silence Dogood.
Harvard College. What?
Is that saying that a bunch of our Harvard PhD peoples were even incompetent idiots back then?
From what sounds Dogood's dream is, yeah, that sounds Dogood's dream, aka Benjamin Franklin's dream. Because how the hell did he did not just make that up in his mind. He legitimately drank that. There ain't no way that he legitimately just wrote it just to get a kick out of his brother.
There's no way on that one.
No.
This one had to be an actual dream that he had.
With actual sincereness, because you can actually feel the tension in the letter.
And I'm not saying all people that graduate from Harvard are incompetent idiots. There are a lot of, our own Congress members on both sides of the aisles, Republicans and Democrats alike, that come from Harvard University and, in my opinion, are not very competent, and they're not very wise or smart, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. I'm saying the congressional members are. Not everybody. And even apparently back in 1722, it was a ignorance problem even back then. From Harvard University at that.
Let's see if when was Harvard founded on?
When was Harvard founded?
Mm-hmm. Maybe one of the oldest schools in America, but we got at least... See, I'm gonna guess 1722. Or... excuse me, y'all. 1636.
September 8th, 1636. Alright then. Alrighty then. Alright, now to finish up the episode with the Silence Dogood letter number 5. May 28th, 1722. Mulieri magis congruent ter. I don't know what that means. It's some kind of language that, Silence Dogood said that she was going to put in there, one phrase of something from a different language across the world. So that's what that is. To the author of the New England Courant. Sir, I shall here present your readers with a letter from one who informs me that I have begun at the wrong end of my business, and that I ought to begin at home, and censure the vices and follies of my own sex before I venture to meddle with yours. Nevertheless, I am resolved to dedicate this speculation to the fair tribe, and endeavor to show that Mr. Ephraim charges women with being particularly guilty of pride, idleness, etc., wrongfully, inasmuch as the men have not only a great share in those vices as the women, but are likewise in a great measure the cause of that which women are guilty of. I think it will be best to produce my antagonist before I encounter him. Oh, boy. So, that's Benjamin Franklin just straight up saying, like, to his first hater, pretty much. Like, you can't be so focused on the sex of women, And then he's like, well, the whole reason why women are the way they are is because we men drive them to be that way. Like, did he really just say that? I really think he did.
He's a womanizer, you know that.
Oh, that's shocking. Let me read that just one more time. Like, nevertheless, I am resolved to dedicate the speculation to the fair tribe and endeavor to show that Mr. Ephraim charges women with being particularly guilty of pride, idleness, etc., wrongfully, and inasmuch as the men are not only as great a share to share in those vices,
vices as the women,
idleness, etc., wrongfully, inasmuch as the men not only as great a share in those vices as the women, but are likewise in a great measure the cause of that which the women are guilty of. Yeah, he for real just said that.
Mm-hmm.
Because of men's own pride and idleness and ignorance. It's the reason why women are. Wow. Okay. I think it would be best to produce my antagonist before I encounter him. To Ms. Dogood, Madam, my design in troubling you with this letter is to desire you would begin with your own sex first. Let the first volley of your resentments be directed against female vice. Let female idleness, ignorance, and folly, which are vices more peculiar to your sex than to ours, be the subject of your satyrs, but more especially female pride, which I think is intolerable. Here is a large field that wants cultivation, and which I believe you are able, if willing, to improve with an advantage. And when you have once reformed the women, you will find it a much easier task to reform the men, because the women are the prime causes of a great many male enormities. This is all at present from your friendly well-wisher, Ephraim Censorius. So already we have our first, like, I guess, feminist and misogynistic fight going on here.
And Ben Franklin is the feminist.
I guess Ben Franklin's a feminist. I didn't know that.
And,
well, it seems that way anyway.
Well, he was a player. You know the history of Benjamin Franklin, right?
No.
Oh, he was a player. Look at the little stat.
How about we finish this letter and then...
Well, I'm just saying it's kind of funny hearing this coming from Benjamin Franklin when everybody knows he was the man that said, yeah, I'm not going to settle for a wife. I'm the one that advocates procreation. Spreading.
All right.
Having multiple,
well, you know what?
Having multiple girlfriends.
You know what?
So I think it's just kind of funny hearing it from Benjamin Franklin at this point.
How do I pose that? Was
Benjamin Franklin a player at his time?
A womanizer, I guess.
He was quite the womanizer.
It says. Just flat out, he was quite the womanizer. All that interesting.com is the very first thing that pops up.
Yeah.
Ben Franklin wrote in his autobiography that the hard-to-be-governed passion of my youth had hurried me frequently into intrigues with low women that fell in my way. Indeed, he was quite the womanizer. As a young man, he made advances towards his friend's mistress, who had fathered an illegitimate child.
Told you.
Okay.
And that man is the one that's saying all this, folks. It sounds good. Yep. Ninja Frillin.
Alright.
So,
okay.
Just have your brain hurt a little bit. Not have that nice little vein in your temple pop a little bit, you know.
Where's that Britney song, Womanizer? Where's that one? Where's that song? After thanks to my correspondent for his kindness in cutting out work for me, I must assure him that I find it a very difficult matter to reprove women separate from the men. For what vice is there in which men have not as great a share as the women? And in some have they not a far greater, as in drunkenness, swearing, and etc. And if they have, then it follows that when a vice is to be reproved, men who are most culpable deserve the most reprehension, and certainly therefore ought to have it. But we will waive this point at present, and proceed to a particular consideration of what my correspondent calls female vice. As for idleness, if I should quare, I guess? Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Quaere. I've never seen that word. Where are the greatest number of its votaries to be found, with us or the men? It might, I believe, be easy and truly answered with the latter. For notwithstanding, the men are commonly complaining how hard they are forced to labor only to maintain their wives in pomp and idleness. Yet, if you go among the women, you will learn that they have always more work upon their hands than they are able to do, that a woman's work is never done, etc. But, however, suppose we should grant for once that we are generally more idle than the men, without making any allowance for the weakness of the sex. I desire to know whose fault that is. Are not the men to blame for their folly in maintaining us in idleness? Who is it that there can be handsomely supported in affluence, ease, and pleasure by another, that will choose rather than to earn his bread by the sweat of his own brows? And if a man will be so fond and so foolish as to labor hard himself for a livelihood, and suffer his wife in the meantime to sit in ease and idleness, let him not blame her if she does so, for it is in great measure his own fault. For now the ignorance and folly which he reproaches us with, let us see if we are fools and ignoramuses, whose fault it is, the men's or ours. An ingenious writer, having his subject in hand, has the following words, wherein he lays the fault wholly on the men for not allowing women the advantages of education. I have, says he, often thought of it as one of the most barbarous customs in the world, considering us as a civilized and Christian country, that we deny advantages of learning to women. We reapproach the sex every day with folly and impertinence, while I am confident, had they the advantages of education equal to us, they would be guilty of less than ourselves. One would wonder, indeed, how it should happen that women are conversable at all, since they are only beholding to natural parts for all their knowledge. For their youth is spent to teach them to stitch and sew or make baubles. They are taught to read, indeed, and perhaps write their names or so, and that is the height of a woman's education. And I would but ask any who slight the sex of their understanding, what is a man, gentleman I mean, good for that is taught no more? If knowledge and understanding has been useless addictions to the sex, God Almighty would never have given them capacities, for he made nothing needless. What has the woman done to forfeit the privilege of being taught? Does she plague us with her pride and impertinence? Why do we not let her learn, that she might not have more wit? Shall we upbraid women with folly, when 'tis only the error of this inhumane custom that hindered them from being made wiser? So much for female ignorance and folly. For now let us a little consider the pride which my correspondent thinks is intolerable. By this expression of his, one would think he is in some dejected swain, tyrannized over by some cruel, haughty nymph, who perhaps he thinks has no more reason to be proud than himself. Alas a day, what shall we say in this case? Why truly, if women are proud, it is certainly owing to the men still. For if they will be such simpletons as to humble themselves at their feet and fill their credulous ears with extravagant praises of their wit, beauty, and other accomplishments, perhaps where there are none too, and when women are by this means persuaded that they are something more than humane, what wonder is it that if they carry themselves haughtily and live extravagantly? Notwithstanding, I believe there are more instances of extravagant pride to be found among men than among women, and this fault is certainly more heinous in the former than in the latter.
Oh, yeah.
Upon the whole, I conclude that it will be impossible to lash any vice of which men are not equally guilty with the women, and consequently deserve an equal, if not greater, share in the censure. However, I exhort both to amend where both are culpable. Otherwise, they may expect to be severely handled, sir, your humble servant. Silence, Dogood. And P.S. Ms. Dogood has lately left her seat in the country to come to Boston, where she intends to tarry for the summer season in order to complete her observations of the present reigning vices of the town.
So that letter, Mrs. Sounds Dogood was on a hit job.
Yeah, just straight up, like, pointing at the fact that, back in those days, the men were allowed to go to education, they were allowed to go to university, the women were, only good for staying in the house, cooking, cleaning, you might, learn how to write your name, but other than that, and you learn how to read, so, that's the basis of your education as a woman, and, and that's the man's law, yet again, man's law versus nature's law. Man's law decreed that women were not supposed to have, higher education than men.
Yep, and Benjamin Franklin used that logic to his advantage. Womanizing.
Benjamin Franklin is the first feminist.
Yeah, and using the feminist as a womanizing. Because you didn't look at how many women he was with, now did you? You probably should.
I don't want to. No.
Oh, cool.
This is supposed to be a little kid friendly here. Hello.
But you have a little historic reference though. Just to get the
Nobody needs to know how many girlfriends Benjamin Franklin had. All we need to know, that number is a lot, and that's the only word we need.
A lot in a feminist. Now, was he pretending to be a feminist? Well, obviously he was pretending as being a woman. So
he's pretending to be a woman.
So it's but is he real?
He seems to be.
Is he really sincere about those points though, or if he is he really just putting on the persona? Because it's 16 years old.
I mean,
hormones are.
I can understand exactly where he's coming from. If men want to complain that women are stupid, well, it's your own darn fault because you won't let women have the right to education in a new country where you have the chance to rebuild something new and not have ignorant men and women like you did in the old country.
You're right, Founding Father, but I'm also going to put this note out there too. What's that? You're a homewrecker.
He was a homewrecker.
Because he uses that same ideology on his wife. He ain't treating you right, baby. He ain't letting you do in the school. He ain't helping you doing the housework. I'll help you. That's what I'm pointing out at like, how much of this is really true, Benjamin? You're sounding a good game and you're doing a good job, but it's like history, your track record doesn't really help now, especially.
Yikes.
But especially 300 years in the future. The ideology is a little tainted.
Well, yeah, it is tainted now, but it came from a really good and pure place.
It did.
Look.
It did. No, it did.
It just, Benjamin Franklin was like, give women the right to education because some women are really, really, really smart. Smarter than men even. And while the men only have to go out and do the one job for their one labor that they have to do that's within their one skill, I mean, granted, there's probably a lot of work that comes with that one skill, but the women have to do
a lot more.
So much. They have so many more skills than the man.
I understand that, and I agree. It's messed up. And Benjamin also agreed with it, too. But he uses it to his other advantages, too. So.
Yeah. And with that being said, that's all for today. With the U.S. Constitution 1.2, the Silence Do Good letters.
3 to 5.
3 through 5. That was really, really interesting.
We can only imagine how these letters will get more, because you realize that
Like, that's the first,
the further we go more in these letters, the more and more detail, more he's like actually like exploring the world, and not just exploring the world, but like getting other people's ideologies and ideas, and using those ideas to his advantages.
That's the heck of a first, like, that's like the first hater story pretty much. Like, that's the first, comment section back and forth back in the day. Oh my god.
So Texas are writing letters to each other. He ain't my pen pal, he's my pen foe. I will have blisters in me fingers for you.
Like, that's pretty cool. The first hate mail letter, the first hate mail. The first argument back and forth.
That went public.
Yeah. The first public argument that was presented in a newspaper here in America. I wonder if Mr. Ephraim Censorius, because it's like, censor, censorious, get it? Ephraim Censorius. And I'm pretty sure Ephraim has, like, a definition.
Not a good
that
definition.
That is not very good either. What was the question again?
What
does Ephraim mean? Oh. It means fruitful. Okay, so fruitful's... So Ephraim can be translated as I will be fruitful or double fruitful.
Oh, okay.
So fruitful censorship?
Yeah.
Because censorious, it was spelled like censorship. Or like censor.
Censor fruit.
Censor fruit.
Yeah, that sounds like a made up name. Now we're looking back on it, that sounds like a made up name.
But there are people out there in the world named Ephraim.
Being fruitful, but censorious?
Yeah, that last one.
That's censorious. The first one,
censorious, yeah.
The first one he could get away with, but that last one though.
No.
But alright, y'all. But with that,
we are all done with the episode, so stay tuned for another one. We are going to be shooting another one on Thursday. It'd be America, A Narrative History 1.3.
And we're going to get a little bit more further. We should only call it 1 point, like, 2
1.2 and a half.
Yeah. Because we legitimately only went through, like, one patches on America.
But there was a lot of detail that we had to go over.
Oh yeah, I mean it was granted, it was expected.
Yeah. And with that, we've come to a close. And to remember, y'all, to live life with eyes wide open. Leave a comment and share. Leave a like, hit that notification bell so that you're notified whenever we have another episode. Thanks, y'all.
And have a good day.